Welcome back to the channel, Basketball Fan, and today we're diving into a move that has already sparked a lot of conversation, a lot of debate, and, honestly, a lot of overreaction. The Indiana Fever have officially signed Myisha Hines-Allen, and right from the jump, let's make one thing absolutely clear. This is not a terrible signing. It just isn't. No matter how loud the criticism gets, no matter how many negative takes start circulating online, this move, when you really break it down, makes a lot more sense than people are willing to admit at first glance. Now, of course, the pushback was predictable. The moment the signing became official, a wave of reactions came pouring in, many of them pointing directly at her most recent stint with the Dallas Wings. And to be fair, those criticisms aren't coming out of nowhere. Last season in Dallas was rough. There's no need to sugarcoat it or pretend otherwise. Statistically, it didn't look good. Visually, it didn't look good. The rhythm wasn't there, the confidence looked shaky at times, and the overall impact just wasn't what people expected. For fans who watched her closely throughout that season, frustration makes sense. But here's where the conversation starts to lose balance. One bad season, no matter how disappointing, does not erase an entire career. It doesn't suddenly redefine a player who has spent years proving she can contribute at a high level in this league. When you look at Myisha Hines-Allen over the full scope of her career, you're not looking at a one-dimensional or unreliable player. You're looking at someone who has consistently brought production, efficiency, and versatility to every team she's been part of. This is a player who has hovered around respectable three-point shooting percentages for a forward, someone who has shown the ability to stretch the floor just enough to keep defenses honest, and someone who has historically played with a level of physicality that can't be taught. That sudden dip in shooting efficiency last season, where her numbers fell into the mid-20s% range from beyond the arc, stands out not because it defines her, but because it's an outlier. It's the exception, not the rule. And if you've followed basketball long enough, especially in a league as system-dependent as the WNBA, you know exactly how often situations like this occur. A player lands in the wrong system, gets placed into a role that doesn't suit their strengths, and everything starts to unravel. Confidence drops, rhythm disappears, and suddenly a reliable contributor looks like a completely different player. Then, all it takes is a change of scenery, a reset in expectations, and a better fit for that same player to reemerge. We've seen it happen time and time again. And that's why context matters so much here. The narrative surrounding her struggles in Dallas has grown louder than the reality of her overall career, and a lot of that comes from fan perception. Fans of the Dallas Wings didn't enjoy watching her play last season, and that's completely fair from their perspective. But frustration with a player in a specific situation doesn't automatically translate to that player being ineffective everywhere else. Those are two very different conversations, and they often get blurred together in moments like this. Another key factor that's being overlooked is expectation. The Indiana Fever are not bringing in Myisha Hines-Allen to be a franchise cornerstone. They're not asking her to carry the offense, dominate possessions, or justify a massive contract. That version of expectation, the one that may have existed elsewhere, is not the reality here. This signing is about role. It's about fit. It's about adding depth to a roster that is clearly trying to build something sustainable and competitive around its core. And when you shift the conversation into that framework, things start to look very different. Because in the right role, Myisha Hines-Allen has already proven she can be extremely effective. Just a couple of seasons ago, she was coming off the bench for the Washington Mystics, one of the most structured and competitive teams in the league at the time. She wasn't just filling minutes, she was impacting games. She brought energy the moment she stepped onto the floor. She brought toughness, versatility, and a willingness to do the kind of work that doesn't always show up in highlight reels, but absolutely shows up in winning basketball. That version of her isn't some distant memory from 5 or 6 years ago. It's recent. It's relevant. It's part of who she still is as a player. She has been a starter. She has been a key contributor on playoff teams. She has delivered in meaningful moments, including a standout performance against the New York Liberty in the 2023 playoffs, where she put up 21 points and grabbed 8 rebounds. That's not ancient history. That's a reminder of what she's capable of when she's in the right environment. Then there's the age factor, which some people have tried to use as a concern. She's 30 years old. And in today's game, especially in the WNBA, that's not old. Not even close. Players are extending their primes longer than ever thanks to better training, conditioning, and overall player care. More importantly, she hasn't been plagued by major injuries, which means her physical tools are still very much intact. She's still strong, still mobile, still able to compete at a high level. And that physicality might be the most important piece of this entire signing when you look at the direction the Indiana Fever are heading. This is a team that is clearly building its identity around Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston. You've got elite playmaking, shooting range, and offensive versatility with Clark, and you've got interior presence, efficiency, and composure with Boston. That foundation is incredibly strong from a skill standpoint. But what every team needs to complement that kind of talent is toughness, edge, physical presence. Someone who's willing to embrace the dirty work. That's exactly where Myisha Hines-Allen fits in. She's listed at 6 feet 1 inch, but she plays bigger than that. Much bigger. She's built with a level of strength that allows her to hold her ground against bigger forwards and centers. She sets hard screens that create real separation. She battles for rebounds. She's not easily pushed off her spot, and she doesn't shy away from contact on either end of the floor. And then there's something that doesn't show up in the stat sheet, but matters just as much: presence. When she's on the floor, opposing teams feel it. They think twice about driving into the paint without a plan. They think twice about getting overly physical or trying to intimidate younger players. That kind of presence changes the tone of a game, and for a player like Caitlin Clark, who is going to draw a lot of defensive attention and physical pressure, having someone like that alongside her is incredibly valuable. Offensively, the expectations are clear, and that's a good thing. She's not being asked to create her own shot consistently or carry offensive possessions. In fact, the less she has to force things, the better she tends to play. What suits her best is playing within a system, making quick decisions, moving the ball, cutting at the right moments, and taking open shots when they come naturally within the flow of the offense. One of the more underrated aspects of her game is her passing ability. Even during a down year, she was still able to average around 3 assists per game in limited minutes. For a forward or center, that's significant. When you project that over a larger role, you're looking at a player who can facilitate from the front court, keep the ball moving, and help create opportunities for others. That kind of skill set fits seamlessly next to players like Aliyah Boston, who can operate effectively in the post, and Caitlin Clark, who commands so much attention on the perimeter. Roster construction also plays a major role in understanding this move. The Indiana Fever are not operating with unlimited cap space. They can't simply go out and sign elite, top-tier talent at every position. That's not how team building works, especially in a league with tight financial structures. So, what do smart teams do? They find value. They identify players who, in the right situation, can outperform their contract. And that's exactly what this signing represents. It's a calculated move, not a desperate one. It's about adding a player who brings experience, toughness, and versatility without disrupting the team's long-term flexibility. It's about giving the roster more balance, more depth, and more options when it comes to rotations and matchups. Because when you really step back and look at the bigger picture, this isn't about whether Myisha Hines-Allen is going to be a star. It's about whether she can contribute in a meaningful way within a defined role. And based on everything we've seen throughout her career, the answer to that is yes. Absolutely yes. So as the noise continues and the hot takes keep coming, it's important to stay grounded in context. This isn't a flashy move. It's not going to dominate headlines for weeks. But sometimes the most important pieces aren't the ones that grab attention right away. Sometimes they're the ones that quietly make everything else work better. And if this signing plays out the way it realistically can, we might look back on it as one of those under-the-radar decisions that helped push the Indiana Fever one step closer to becoming a truly complete team. Welcome back to the channel, basketball fan, and let's keep breaking this down because this is where the conversation really starts to separate surface-level reactions from actual basketball logic. When you're building a roster, especially in a league like the WNBA, you're not just chasing stars. You're not just stacking big names and hoping everything magically fits together. Real team building is about identifying players who can step into defined roles and execute them without needing constant touches, without needing the offense to revolve around them, and without disrupting the natural flow of your core pieces. That's exactly what this move represents for the Indiana Fever with the addition of Myisha Hines-Allen. Because let's be honest about the situation. At this stage of free agency, the landscape is very different from what it looked like at the beginning. Early on, there's always excitement, speculation, big names floating around, and the idea that your team might land a franchise-altering player. But as time goes on, those options start to disappear. Players sign elsewhere. Cap space tightens. Opportunities shrink. And what you're left with isn't about making headlines, it's about making smart decisions with what's still available. That's the reality every front office faces, and it's the exact context people need to understand when evaluating this move. The Indiana Fever were never in a position here to suddenly pull off a miracle signing and bring in a superstar out of nowhere. That was never realistic. So if you remove that unrealistic expectation and focus on what actually matters, the question becomes much simpler. Did they add a player who can contribute, who fills a need, and who raises the overall functionality of the roster? And when you look at Myisha Hines-Allen through that lens, the answer is clearly yes. What she brings is something tangible, something you can point to and say, that helps. Experience is the first thing. This is not a player who needs time to adjust to the league or figure things out. She's been through different systems, different roles, different expectations. She understands how to play within a team concept, and that matters a lot for a roster that's still developing chemistry around its young core. Then there's strength real, physical strength that translates immediately on the court. She's not going to get pushed around. She's not going to be outworked in physical matchups. That alone gives the team a different kind of edge. And then there's versatility, which might be the most underrated part of her game. She's not locked into one position or one style of play. She can guard multiple spots on the floor, which is incredibly valuable in today's game where defensive switching and adaptability are key. She can slide into a small ball center role when needed, giving the team flexibility in how they match up against different opponents. She can come off the bench and give you solid, productive minutes without needing to dominate the ball. That kind of versatility is exactly what you want from a role player. Because that's what this is about: role. Not star power, not usage rate, not highlight plays every night. It's about having someone who can step into a game, understand exactly what's needed in that moment, and deliver it. Maybe that's 15 minutes of physical defense. Maybe it's 20 minutes of energy, rebounding, and smart ball movement. Maybe it's setting screens, making the extra pass, and doing all the little things that don't always show up in the box score but absolutely impact winning. That's where Myisha Hines-Allen can make her presence felt. And yes, if this signing had happened at the very beginning of free agency, the reaction might have been different. Expectations were higher back then. There was more optimism about landing bigger names, about making a splash, about accelerating the rebuild in a more dramatic way. That's just the nature of the offseason. But context changes everything. As the market evolves and options narrow, the definition of a good move shifts. It becomes less about potential and more about practicality. Less about upside and more about reliability. In that context, this is a solid move. Not a home run, not a headline-grabbing decision that changes the entire trajectory of the franchise overnight, but a smart, practical signing that addresses real needs. And sometimes, that's exactly what a team needs more than anything else. Because building a successful roster isn't just about stacking talent. It's about balance. It's about having the right mix of skill sets, personalities, and roles that complement each other. When you look at the core of this team with Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston, the identity is clear. You have elite offensive creation, spacing, and playmaking with Clark, and you have interior presence, efficiency, and composure with Boston. That's a strong foundation. But what makes a team truly dangerous is everything around that foundation. It's the players who fill in the gaps, who handle the responsibilities that allow the stars to shine without being overwhelmed. That's where a player like Myisha Hines-Allen fits perfectly. She doesn't need the ball in her hands 20 times a game to be effective. She doesn't need plays called specifically for her to make an impact. She can operate within the flow, take advantage of opportunities as they come, and focus on doing the things that support the overall system. That's a valuable trait, especially on a team where the offensive hierarchy is already established. Defensively, her ability to guard multiple positions adds another layer of flexibility. In today's game, where matchups can change quickly and teams are constantly looking to exploit weaknesses, having a player who can switch, adapt, and hold her own against different types of opponents is incredibly important. She gives the coaching staff options. She allows for different lineup combinations. She helps cover for potential mismatches. All of that contributes to a more cohesive and resilient team. Off the bench, her role becomes even more important. Bench production is often the difference between winning and losing close games. Starters can set the tone, but it's the bench that maintains it. Having someone who can come in and give you consistent, reliable minutes, someone who won't shrink in those moments, is a huge asset. And that's exactly what she's capable of providing. You're not asking her to carry the second unit offensively. You're asking her to stabilize it, to bring energy, to keep things organized, and to make sure the level of play doesn't drop off when the starters sit. And let's not overlook the mental side of things. Players who have been through ups and downs, who have experienced both success and struggle, often bring a level of maturity and perspective that younger teams need. They understand how to handle adversity. They know how to stay focused when things aren't going perfectly. They can help set a tone in the locker room that goes beyond stats and performance. That kind of presence can be just as valuable as anything that happens on the court. The criticism, while understandable in certain contexts, often misses these nuances. It focuses too heavily on what went wrong in one situation without fully considering what could go right in another. It assumes that a player is defined by their worst stretch rather than their overall body of work. And in doing so, it overlooks the possibility that a better fit, a clearer role, and a fresh start can completely change the narrative. Because that's what this is for Myisha Hines-Allen, a fresh start. A chance to reset, to step into a role that suits her strengths, and to contribute to a team that is building something meaningful. And if she embraces that opportunity, if she focuses on what she does best, and if she leaves the struggles of last season behind, there's a very real chance that this signing ends up looking much better a few months from now than it does today. That's why calling this a terrible move just doesn't hold up under scrutiny. It ignores context. It ignores role. It ignores the realities of roster construction and free agency. It reduces a complex decision to a simple, reactionary take, and that's not how you evaluate basketball moves, especially not ones like this. At the end of the day, this is about adding a piece that fits. A player who can contribute without demanding too much, who can bring physicality and versatility, and who can help round out a roster that's still finding its identity. It's not flashy, it's not dramatic, but it's smart. And smart moves, even when they don't get immediate praise, are often the ones that matter most over the course of a season. So yeah, say what you want. Criticize it if you feel like it. Question how it's going to play out. That's all part of the conversation. But labeling this as a bad signing without considering the full picture doesn't really make sense. There's logic behind it. There's purpose behind it. And there's a very real path for it to work out in a positive way for the Indiana Fever. And honestly, that's what makes it interesting. Because sometimes, the moves that don't generate the most excitement at first are the ones that end up making the biggest difference when it actually counts.